myself. Thursday, the 20th of July, came to me and said, I will give you this one elastic day. Snap it shut or stretch it like bread dough. So I put my hands in, kneading and pulling. It was a gauze bag day. The blue bellflower opened at the tip of its stalk. I am a body not equipped to take every flag downhill, but looking at all the exits and entrances, I chose white wine in a plain glass goblet, and wearing a flannel nightgown, I went barefoot into the uncut grass. The temperature rose. The yeast began to work. Every spider took to the air. The cells of my skin puffed and tugged, and with a great shout let go their tethers, until looking up, I saw myself like a cloud, like ectoplasm, like an angel among the branches of trees. Then, peeling layer after layer, I went to it letting go, until only the elemental worm remained, letting itself down on a string of spittle. And this is called Coffee and Sweet Rolls. When I remember the dingy hotels where we lay reading Baudelaire, your long elegant fingers, the nervous ritual of your cigarette, you, a young poet working in the steel mills, me, married to a dull chemical engineer. Fever of having nothing to lose, no luggage, a few books, the streetcar. In the manic shadow of Hitler, the guttural monotony of war, often just enough money for the night. Rising together in the clanking elevators to those rooms where we lay like embryos, helpless in the desire to be completed, to be issued out into the terrible world. All night sighing and waking, insatiable. At daylight, counting your change, you would go for coffee. Then, lying alone, I heard the sirens, the common death of everything, and again, the little girl I didn't know, all in white, in a white casket. The boy I once knew, smashed with his motorcycle into the pavement, and what was said, made a wax figure for his funeral, came into me. I had never touched the dead. Always the lock unclicked, and you were back, our breakfast in a paper sack. What I waited for was a tremor in your voice. In those rooms, with my eyes half open, I memorized for that austere and silent woman who waited in the future, who for years survived on this fiction. So even now, I can see you standing thin and naked, the shy flush of your rising cock pointed toward heaven as you pull down the dark window shade. The solution, my friend the supermarket talks to me through my friend the television set. Did I read this one? No. So solution, my friend the supermarket talks to me through my friend the television set. They tell me I am not lonely. Come to me, Super says. Have an electric clock and a big cucumber, very cheap. You can set yourself to go off with the alarm. They take me in my sleep to the shopping plaza and show me temptations in plastic. All this can be yours, they say. Gorge yourself. And here's some little new ones, couple. Words. Wallace Stevens says, a poet looks at the world as a man looks at a woman. I can never know what a man sees when he looks at a woman. That is the sealed universe. On the outside of the bubble, everything is stretched to infinity. Along the blacktop, trees are bearded as old men, like rows of nodding gray-bearded mandarins. Their second-hand beards were spun by female gypsy moths. All mandarins are trapped in their images. A poet looks at the world as a woman looks at a man. This is called Up There. Belshazzar saw this blue as he came into the walled garden, though outside all was yellow, sunlight striking the fractals of sand, the wind striating the sand in riffles. Land changes slowly, the fathoms overhead accruing particles reflecting blue or less blue. Vapor, a transient thing, a dervish seen rising in a whirl of wind, or brief cloud casting its changing shadow, though below the open-mouthed might stand transfixed by mirage, a visionary oasis. Nevertheless, this deep upside-down wash watercolor above planted gardens, tended pomegranates, rouged soles of the feet of lovers lounging in an open tent, the hot blue above the harem, tethered and restless as camels. This quick vision between walls, event, freak ball, shook jar of vapor. All those whose eyes were not gouged out have looked up and seen within the cowl this tenuous wavelength. You wanted me to read Mihailovich? An older poem? Okay. Let's see. This is called Translations. Here it is. 45 years ago, Alexander Mihailovich Turitsyn, son of a white Russian owner of a silk stocking factory in Constantinople, we rumpled your rooming house bed, sneaked past your landlady, and turned your plaster Madonna to the wall. Are you out there, short, vulgar civil engineer? Did you know I left you for a Princeton geologist who called me girly? 10 years later, he was still in the Midwest when he died under a rock fall. I told you I was pregnant. You gave me money for the abortion. I lied to you. I needed clothes to go out with the geologist. You called me Kushka, little cat. Sometimes I stopped by the civil engineering library where you sat with other foreign students. You were embarrassed my husband might catch you. He was in the chemistry lab with his Bunsen burner boiling water for tea. Alexander Mihailovich Turitsyn, fig of my pallid college days, plum of my head. Did the silk stocking factory go up in flames? Did the German fox jump out of the desert sleeve and gobble your father up? Are you dead? Second-hand engine, formula concrete. We were still meeting in stairwells when the best chess player in Champaign-Urbana went to the Spanish Civil War. He couldn't resist heroic gestures. For years, I was haunted by the woman who smashed her starving infant against the Spanish wall. Cautious, staid Mihailovich, so quick to pick my hairpins out of your bed. Average lover, have your balls decayed? Mihailovich, my husband, the chemist with light eyes and big head, the one whose body I hated, came back in the flesh 15 years ago. He was wearing a tight Western shirt he had made himself. There wasn't anything he couldn't do. He talked about wine and cheese tasting parties. We folk danced at a ski lodge. So this is life, I said. He told my daughter he was her daddy. It wasn't true. You're all so boring. My friend from Japan, Kana Maeda, the scholar of classical haiku, whose fingers, whose entire body had been trained to comply, her face pale without powder, her neck so easily bent. After she died from the radiation, her translations of Basho were published by interested men who failed to print her correct name. So the narrow book appears to have been written by a man. Faded in these ways, she is burned on my flesh, as kimonos were burned on the flesh of women in the gamma rays of Hiroshima. She wasn't one of those whose skin peeled in the Holocaust, whose bones cracked. Graceful and obscure, she was a